when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. What are you talking about there?
It's one of my favorite quotes by Dr. Wayne Dyer. Could actually be my absolute favorite quote because it speaks completely into the work that I do, which in essence is saying perspective is reality, right? And most people don't know that, but as you kind of go deeper into the work, what you really discover is that the results that we get are a byproduct at the deepest level of the perspective that we are. And it can sound a bit strange to say we are a perspective, but we really are if we kind of investigate and reverse engineer back. So it's speaking into this difference between the content of life and the context. So kind of the content of life is how it is, but what determines its meaning is how we view it, the context. The reason I love it, and we're going pretty deep straight out of the gates here,
Bring it.
is that why that was so powerful for me was that I learned, well, if I can learn to shift perspective, then my outer world changes. So that's why the quote is so powerful, because it's like when you, or if you change the way you look at things, the way things look change. So it helps you kind of narrow straight in on what to focus on if you want to make a true transformation.
So you said your outer world changes. So this is a golf podcast. You're a golfer. You talk about golf a lot. So if we're playing a round of golf and let's say two people are playing a round of golf, and one has one perspective, the other has another perspective. They're both experiencing the same thing, but they perceive it as different experiences. I'm assuming that's what you're getting at. But when you say outer world changes, it's still a golf course for both people. It's still golf shots. It's still a golf ball. What do you mean outer world changes in that case?
Yeah. So I like to delineate this, it's not a difference, but it's most people think their outer world, so what happens in external reality, determines how they feel inside on their inner world, right? So yeah, when I haven't kind of delineated a framework there, that can be a bit confusing.
Sure,
So I'm happy that you
sure.
asked. So yeah, it's to really understand that our reality is completely our own. We think that there's one world out there, but really, if we've all got different programming, that programming creates a different lens for each of us. So there's actually 8 billion worlds if we kind of say there's 8 billion people in the world, roughly, right? So what that's speaking to is that you have your own reality. So what we're kind of getting into is to see what is your subjective reality that you're the creator of. So that's why, yes, the 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 form of life might stay the same, but how you view it's going to determine how you think, feel, and then act about it. So it's that difference between adversity, or is that something that's growth centric, right? For some, it's a disaster. For some, it's like it's an evolution. Just depends how you want to look at it.
Hmm. Yeah, for some it's a disaster, for some it's an evolution. Okay, so then, you know, for the skeptics and cynics that are listening, because I know there's some, the ones that say this sounds out there. This sounds like, what are you talking about? There's 8 billion different worlds, and change your inner experience, and your perception is reality. So for those, let's make it as practical as possible. So we're on the golf course. You and I are playing, and you're really really good at this, and let's say that I'm really really bad at this, just for argument's sake. How would you and I probably experience that round of golf?
As in good at the psychology or good at golf?
Okay, let's say good at the psychology. Whether or not I'm a better golfer or you're a better golfer, maybe that's beside the point.
Yeah.
But yeah, psychology of it.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, so, we could be both playing golf to whatever standard that we are, but why is it that some people enjoy their round regardless of what result they get, and others, they just beat themselves up, and it's practically a trauma for them. I can remember back in my junior golf days where I was doing all that I could to be perfect at the game. Good luck with that.
Mm.
But I rarely left the course happy. Even if I shot a good score or won a tournament, there was always more left. Like, oh, I left some shots out there, right? So it's this continuous beration of self that is this inner critic, this inner voice. So that's kind of how I would explain that. Did that kind of answer it for you?
Yeah, yeah. So the idea is, um, basically it comes down to enjoyment. You're going to enjoy it probably more than me. So is enjoyment the highest end, the highest goal? Is that how you see it?
Yeah, I'd say peace is probably my
Peace.
delineation of success, right?
Hmm.
In regardless of what I'm doing. And it's this ability to remain at peace, regardless of circumstance. Because what essentially we're always looking for, I assert, is this sense of peace, this sense of freedom, this sense of ease. You know, primarily we're hardwired to avoid suffering and try to feel good, right? Is to, you know, get away from the suffering. So yeah, I would say, success is peace, but that's where we enter this state, which, a lot of people call flow. I call it free flow, freedom and flow, where we're playing fully at peace, fully at ease, and the byproduct of that is where we just play amazing golf because we love it, right? We get to play golf. We're not in this. I have to play golf. I should be playing a certain way. I must. It's a totally different energy, and probably the greatest question I'd ever ask any golfer, if they're honest, is what energy are you moving from when you play golf? Is it freedom or is it fear? And if it's fear, there's a lot of evolution, both both personally and in the sport for them that is available.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of room for growth if they're acting from fear. So is peace at odds with like competitiveness or drive or hard work, grinding, those kind of things? Do you see that as a different? Are those at odds?
I mean, I'd say that those probably are in the realm of what I would say force. Right. What I'm speaking about is power. And it's quite funny because I think at the end of our last podcast, you asked me what book would I recommend. And we were talking about The Power of Now, that you're reading that. So I'll catch up with you and how you found that. But one of the books that I shared, I never really share. I don't think I have since, because it's quite a deep read. But it's a profound book. It delineates power versus force. And so what you're sharing here is kind of, or as I hear it, is more in the force, this very traditional personal development style way of getting results, right? Grit, determination, right? It's insert the German kind of workout voice behind it, like you can do it, right? But for me, what I'm about is literally to still have goals, to still have something that you're committed to. And there is a form of discipline involved in order to move towards that goal. But whenever I'm working with anyone, whether they're a golfer or any kind of athlete, I'm looking at the why. Like, why are you chasing what you're chasing? Why are you doing what you're doing? And this is where we get into true power, because what they discover is that I'm helping them, let's say, get to the results that they don't know they want. Mm.
Mm, right. You're changing their why, right?
Yes, because most of people's why is to overcome some form of, let's say, inadequacy, some form of lack, some form of scarcity, some form of fear. And when people really get to, like, what's the end product of any goal or result that people are chasing, they think it's the thing, right? But really underneath it's oftentimes a feeling, right? So it's like if you keep asking and then what with the goal you're getting, fundamentally that experience elicits a feeling. So you're chasing feelings, right? Which is kind of cool because that's why we can then go to, okay, if like freedom, peace, this sense of ease, power, I'd even bucket love in there for the golf podcast, right? Then, what I love showing people is that that's actually already there. It's already there with everybody that's listening. I just love to show people the why as their access point so that we can then dissolve that because it's like a dissolution process to the work that I do.
I want to take a quick moment to talk about the pre shot routine. The ultimate purpose of a pre shot routine is to get you into two mental states, present and freed up. And this has nothing to do with waggles or practice swings or anything like that. In my opinion and experience, anything else you do in the pre shot routine is totally optional. I could tell you exactly what I do, but trying to copy my routine is like tracing over the Mona Lisa and calling yourself Da Vinci. And my pre shot routine is not Mona Lisa, and I'm not Da Vinci, but maybe you get the point. But what you can replicate is how I get present and freed up by the time I pull the club back. There's five main parts of the shot routine that everyone can and should do. Pick a good target, commit to the target, pre accept the result, let it rip with freedom, and the post shot routine. Now, how well you do each of these determines how present and freed up you'll be over the ball and during your swing. If any one of these is done poorly, it's possible to hit a good shot, but you're leaving it more up to chance. While I'd love to go through all five parts of the routine right here, that would take me hours. But lucky for you, I just launched a course on my website called The Perfect Pre-Shot Routine. I take you through all five of these parts of the routine in tons of detail, along with downloadables, practical exercises, and homework for you to train in practice and on the course. I even take you through an in-depth look at how I strategize a golf course and pick my targets ahead of time. And there's a bonus module at the end that will help you turn this routine into an ingrained habit. You can check out more info and sign up for the Perfect Pre-Shot Routine digital course by going to joshnicholsgolf.com/course. Again, head to joshnicholsgolf.com/course, or you can click on the link in the show notes. All right, let's get back into the episode.
So you're dissolving we'll call it a faulty why? I mean, is that how I assume when someone comes to you, they're coming to you to say, I'm struggling in some way, help me not struggle and help me perform better or something, or help me feel better. So when you say you're dissolving their why, or maybe that's what you're saying, are you're probably not labeling it as bad or wrong, but what are you labeling a maybe an unhelpful why? How do you label that?
Yeah, so great question. I love these conversations with you, mate, because you really, really do get it. So yeah, none of it's wrong, right? And that's why I love. There's nothing wrong with anyone, but oftentimes the persona that we've built over time, that I'd say we misidentify as, right? That has a perspective of life, which takes us back to the start, which is cool because it's out of that perspective that arises, we could say, the thoughts, the feelings they have, and the actions they take, the results they get. So that why is bubbling out of their perspective. And that's why it's not wrong, is because there's no judgment, because this perspective is subconscious, right? That's the subconscious programming that silently kind of is shaping their life in every arena of life, but especially on the golf course too, right? So the why is coming out of the perspective. So when someone comes to me, I'm looking at who they are for themselves that is generating a why that's often in that kind of lack or scarcity, that inadequacy. Did that make sense?
Yeah. And you're trying to shift them to you're basically helping them dig up a more fulfilling why, or a better driven why, or is that kind of the journey?
Yeah, so it's actually, as we start to dissolve a lot of these what I call virus programs that make up our personality, when they're gone, the why just naturally changes. Right, this is where we don't play with pressure anymore, because like the need to get to this tournament result or this certain amount of wins or status, it just completely dissolves, and that's where we get to play from, to be honest, a really beautiful place of contribution. Right, it's where I get to be an inspiration for others, and it becomes less egocentric. It becomes more about like just enjoying the sport. How can I inspire others to perhaps follow me in whatever they're looking to do in the sport?
Mm. So when we see a really dissatisfied golfer, maybe it's a pro golfer who seems like they're struggling or lost, or they've lost enjoyment of the game, or maybe it's a kind of a regular amateur golfer who's been in a slump for a really long time, and they're in a maybe they're in like the deepest, darkest place they've ever been in their golf game. How do they climb out of that? How can is it snap of the fingers? Oh, I just need to see things differently, or is it a long, difficult, arduous process?
Yeah. Do you want the really unsatisfactory answer?
Yeah, bring it. Of course.
It depends.
It
It
depends.
depends.
Of
And
course.
but I'm not gonna leave it there. So the first thing I'd say is like, I get it. It's okay. And because oftentimes when we're in this state of fear or if we're hurting, then what we truly want is somebody just to get our reality. So I would really meet them where they're at. I'd honor them like for how they're feeling. We don't want to, fix feelings. We actually want to integrate them into what's going on for us. But to be able to use that as like an entry point, to be able to see kind of why is that? Like, why is there so much frustration? What's really going on for you on a deeper level? Because whether we're doing a business as an entrepreneur or we're a golfer or, whatever sport we're playing, it's a persona that's playing it. That's why I love doing the work that I do and why it kind of transitions across all different sports. Golf is just one of my favorites, although you wouldn't know that because I only hit balls for the first time yesterday. And I'm
Mm,
feeling the effects, Josh, today in my
you
body.
sore?
I'm like, oh, hello.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just been a crazy year, but yes, I'm enjoying being back. But yeah, there's a persona driving the show, and how we do something is how we do everything, is how I normally view it. So there'll be something going on for them on a personal level that is impacting their performance. It can be something totally unrelated, often formed in childhood. That's, this deeper subconscious programming that's so oblivious to them that they don't even see it running the show. Or it just might be something that's going on in their life right now. And it's like, how can they let that go? Really let that be. So, yeah, that's what I'd say.
Yeah.
It's going to be different for everyone.
And right, because everyone has and you mentioned the word context. Everyone has a different place they are in their lives. Everyone has a different set of circumstances that led them, right? The kind of storybook of their lives are different. So could could you and this reinforces a point that I've been making on this podcast a lot lately is uh golf psychology, golf mental game is really just human psychology, but applied to golf, and human psychology applied to parenting, human psychology applied to business and work and relationships. So it's the person, and what can we apply that person being a healthier, happier person to golf. So the reason why I'm rambling about that is, do you think it's possible for someone to just go to quote unquote therapy and never talk to the person about golf, and it will help their golf game?
I'd say, yeah, it would. Obviously, if you can marry the two, that's going to be more powerful. But if you can find what's your limits, my brand is called Live Limitless. And the reason for that, most people think, oh, it's like living a limitless life of like wealth, like cars, clothes, like hot relationships, everything that the world would deem success, right? And the brand is all about actually living limitless, meaning the inner limits are dissolved, right? So that's the true meaning. And the byproduct, once those are dissolved, then the outer world, as I was saying before, the goals that we then move towards, it's effortless, it's in flow, and those rise much quicker. So yeah, I would say for sure that it's going to help, because it's the way of being in the world that's then going to transition then onto the golf course. But some of it can be super specific with golf, meaning like where it's a big word, but where they've incurred trauma on the golf course. It really is in how the meaning that we give it. It can be quite tricky to unwind, especially if you've not got like a mirror that can really listen.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is this possible to be done by yourself? Do you think?
Yeah, to a certain degree. And, for me, when I got into this work, which I didn't know existed until I broke myself majestically, um, I didn't have any money, I don't come from money, and I learned so much for free, watching YouTube, getting some books relatively cheaply. So there is a lot that you can do, and there's amazing courses and content, now 10, 12 years later. It's just there's an abundance. But, where my life, I'd say, went to the next level is when I got a mentor, because they were able to cut straight through and show how the theory just applied to my own life. So it's a great place to start. But if you want to go quantum leaping rather than this linear progression, of gradually moving quite slowly, I'd say get somebody that can really listen, that speaks in a way that you understand. That's really important. Just because they're the most advanced teacher in the world doesn't mean that they're the right one for you. You might want to start with somebody that's speaking to you in a slightly different way. So there's plenty of awesome coaches out there. So yeah, that's what I'd say on that.
I want to take a quick moment to tell you about Putter Cup. Putter Cup is a dead simple and truly effective set of putting training aids. And there are 3 different putter cups that tackle 3 distinctly different components of putting. One is for focus, one is for speed, and one is for flexibility. The center cup helps with narrowing in your focus and makes the actual hole feel bigger. And the speed bump helps with dialing in the holing speed. And the to-go cup allows you to have a regulation-sized hole wherever you go. And they're small, so I just keep them in my golf bag and pull them out when I need them. And I really like using the speed bump specifically in practice. It's kind of like my go-to putter cup, and it's just like the name implies. It's a plastic circle that goes around the edge of the hole, and it forces you to dial in your speed and aim, or else the ball won't go in. It kind of deflects it off to the side, or won't quite make it up over, or if you hit it too hard, the ball goes over the other side. So it's really good at specifically that thing. It's awesome. I really like this one. And you might ask, isn't putting hard enough? Why would I want to make it even harder? Well, something that I strongly believe in is making practice hard so playing is easier. And Putter Cup is probably the best and simplest version of that I've ever seen. So you can get 15% off of your Putter Cup order by going to puttercupgolf.com/mentalgolfshow and making sure to sign up for the Putter Cup newsletter. Again, go to puttercupgolf.com/mentalgolfshow, and when you get there, sign up for the Putter Cup newsletter and you will get 15% off of your order. Thanks to Matt and the entire Putter Cup team for supporting the Mental Golf Show. All right, let's get back into the episode.
It's really, I like what you said, kind of a mirror reflecting back, because when you're just going it alone, you're not getting the outside questioning. You can question yourself, you can journal, you can follow prompts, and here's ways to question and investigate your own tendencies and your own whys. But when you speak to someone and they, like you said, dissolve your, or they help you dissolve, they kind of reflect back and say, okay, here's what you just said, and I'm going to say it to you in a more straightforward way, and you're going to realize how irrational that is. Or we say something like, yeah, I'm just scared to lose, I'm afraid of failure. And the instead of just saying that and leaving it there, the person that you're talking to can help you work through that. And whether that's kind of traditional therapy or uh, on down to a golf, like a mental coach, that that outside person can really help.
For sure. And, it's learning that there's different levels, right? Not that there's any that are better or worse. Like I said, it's going to be a level that really speaks to you. But what I found, I started traditionally in personal development, but what I realized, and when my career took a real change, was when I realized that personal development is great, it's a great place to start, but in essence, it's perfecting this best version of our limited self, right? It's perfecting an identity. What I realized is, wait a minute, if we dissolve the identity, which can be quite confronting, I'm dissolving you. But what you're left with is you get back to what I'd say is a deeper part of you that you're completely oblivious to at this moment, that is rather than a personality, a quality. And that quality, when you can get back to that place, is love, it's joy, it's peace, it's power, it's a sense of freedom, abundance, worth. It's all there. So this is like the secret to my work is whenever I meet with anyone, I already know that those qualities are there. I'm just about to hear why they don't think that to be true. Right. So that mirroring is depending on the level, is to really show people what they don't know. Right. I could give you a little example. I had a golfer the other day, just like this beautiful soul, but hasn't been able to enter any golf tournaments. One, because just like a crippling fear, to be honest, but not just in entering tournaments about, the results he'd get, but actually even getting to the course, right? Traveling, he had huge fears. So what we got to is he was living in a world where he wasn't safe and he wasn't going to be okay, right? I talk about a lens, and that would be a big part of his world, but it showed up everywhere in his world. So when I showed him, actually, is that a truth or just something you've inherited and believe? He cried because he really got it, that it wasn't true. And now he's able to fly across the world. He's able to enter tournaments. And even on the golf course, it's just like he would get over, or on a great score down the 18th, get really tight. But what he realized, there was a conversation in his mind that said, really, I'm not safe right now, right? But he was just seeing it as, don't hit it left. Don't hit it in the water. And when he could see that voice for what it is, which is, it's not true that he's not safe in that moment, he could just relax, his shoulders dropped, and he just would smooth it straight left out of bounds. I'm kidding. But either way, he didn't really mind. All the intensity had gone. So it was really beautiful. I had the most lovely message from him the other day. So we'll see where we go. We're just kind of getting started.
That's an incredible example. That the joke you made there at the end of, he feels free, he feels at peace, he feels like enjoying himself finally, and he feels safe. Yet we're still going to hit, some might call it a terrible golf shot, right? And how can you marry the two there, where on the one hand you're kind of doing this in order to perform, right? Someone might come to you because they say, I not only do I want to fly to a tournament and enter a tournament, I want to play well in the tournament, I want to win the tournament, and I want to dissolve my limits so that I can excel and perform well. But does that come at odds with acceptance of results and uh needs and fears of not performing well? Do you track what I'm asking?
Yeah, 100%. It's a great question, you know? So, uh, for me, what happens is when somebody has reconciled a lot of their history and understand why they're playing, and they're playing from freedom and not fear, then the need to get results anymore, actually, it doesn't matter to them, right? They're still going out completely committed, but the attachment to the outcome has been what has been let go of, right? So whether they get the result, whether they don't get the result, they're at peace, and that doesn't leave them any less motivated. Actually, they're way more motivated because they're having fun. They're in that deeper part of themselves, we could say, where the byproduct is vitality, right? When we're not in these limits of our subconscious mind, we are literally thriving, boundless energy, right? And it's amazing. So from that, we get to consciously create something rather than react to what we don't want. So the need dissolves from it. So yeah, that's been my experience, is just like we take the pressure off and people just play like they do with their buddies, or when they're out on the driving range. And it's just really incredible to see how their performance shifts when there's no attachment to the outcome.
So the idea of uh we can consciously create rather than be reactive, and the what comes to mind is kind of prefrontal cortex versus limbic system, amygdala, fight flight response. So how, you know when we're swinging a golf club, we don't necessarily want it to be an overly conscious process. We want it to be reactive and athletic and maybe consciousless, right? Or we want our subconscious to be able to come out, the subconscious that we've trained. Yet we're trying to cultivate this. We don't want to live in this fight or flight. We want to have our prefrontal cortex turned on, that kind of thing. So I don't know. Do you look at it as a popping in and out of subconscious and conscious?
To a certain degree. So yeah, the way I would kind of look at it is when the subconscious is great. Things like swinging a golf club, it's become automatic, and it's why there's so much like dissonance whenever, we've been swinging it a certain way, and then you go to your local pro and they're like, we've just got to move your hands up there slightly by like a millimeter. And you're like, what? That feels incredibly weird, right? But if you
Mm-hmm.
practice it and you groove it in, that then becomes subconscious. Or like walking, it's really helpful. Like if I had to train myself how to walk each morning, that'd be a bit of a slow start, right? So the mechanics of the subconscious, awesome. I'm all for it. Helps me drive, right? But when it comes to the subconscious limits of our persona, we could say, or identity, that's where, it's amazing to step out of that, right? So in essence, when we can learn to step back from our mind, see our mind at play, see what it's generating in that moment, then we're able to turn, or a good word would be to surrender whatever thoughts are coming up. And then we're in just a state of peace where we can trust our subconscious programming, look at the ball, and it goes where it goes. Right. I'm not saying that that's easy. It sounds quite simple, but it's not easy.
Right, you have to break it down systematically over time. So it sounds like there's so we could look at it as two layers. There's the conscious layer of here's how I want to be, and then there's the subconscious layer, and here's how it's the thing that we want to take over when we want to perform something that we've trained. But the limits that you're describing, the fears, I mean, maybe fear is kind of the root of all of it. That's kind of it acts like a gate or something. It acts like a guard that won't let the mind go to the subconscious. It says, "Nope, you can't go here. You have to stay conscious. You have to stay, um, you know, maybe robotic, or you have to, you know, now you're overthinking things." And I don't know, does that kind of metaphor track, or do you disagree in some way?
No, I get what you're saying. And it's just, I'd say in my work, I'm going behind both. Right. So when we connect with what I would say is a deeper part of you, right? This space behind the thoughts that arise on the surface of your mind, that which is conscious and you can observe, is a signpost as to what's stored in the subconscious, right? So it's the ability to be able to see what is conscious and showing up, and then really challenging it from that deeper layer, just like, is this really a truth in this moment? See, when it comes to fear and playing golf, for most people, it's a little bit too late, because the fear is a perspective, right? Fear is actually a perception. So, and some people might say it's an illusion, because it's like, what's fear? Well, for some people, it's going to be one thing. For somebody else, that's a nothingness, right? So it's to see that the fear, this perceived death threat on our deepest level of biology, right, is coming out of because we're viewing it that way, right? So if fear's in there, then we're already tight. We're already, gripping it in a way that we wouldn't when we're feeling at ease, and that's just going to knock out your timing. So it's once you've kind of dissolved these deeper codes, as I like to say, all these limitations, then there's the chatter actually starts to fall away, and that's where you're just present. You're hitting a golf ball. Does that make
Mm,
sense?
absolutely. Have you ever seen someone quit golf because they developed this um deep acceptance of, okay, my performance doesn't define me anymore. I don't, I was playing golf because I was supposed to, because it was something I was good at, because of something I've always done. And now that I can see I've detached myself from the result, now I actually don't feel that driven to play anymore. Have you ever seen someone quit golf because of this?
Actually, yeah. And this is where everybody that might have been listening to this and was thinking, oh, I might get in touch with that Gary Waters, just went, I'm not contacting that Gary Waters.
He's going to make me quit.
Yes. Very rarely, I'd say. But to be honest, I love it. I would love if that was the outcome for someone, if they're gonna then follow their truth. If somebody from, let's say, as a little boy was told he has to play golf, and he then took that on to think that if he was good, then his dad would love him. I'm just making stuff up here, but it was never what he was interested in. He was always interested maybe in art, or maybe in, I don't know, anything, to be honest. Could be building, whatever. So golf was never really his truth, his direction that he wanted to go, but he was forcing himself. So for me, if somebody doesn't enjoy golf and they suddenly realize why they were playing, and it's you know not the reason why they want to be playing, well, isn't that the most beautiful thing, to be able to then go, okay, I'm not going to waste the rest of my life doing something that I don't like? So for me, that would be amazing, but it doesn't happen very often. Um, yeah.
Yeah, isn't it funny how that would be kind of not the best possible outcome, but that would be an amazing outcome, because you golf in and of itself, while you maybe someone approached you to say, I want to perform better at golf because it's I'm identified by it, right? If I need my golf to be better so that I feel better, but kind of um in a sneaky way, and you're not being sneaky, but you say, okay, we need to first detach you from golf, and that can help you play better, but along the way you might realize, wait, I've been doing this for all the wrong reasons. My why has been different, and that actually tracks with my own life really strongly. When you said I'm making this up, that sounds like you were describing my own journey with golf in a lot of ways. Where my um, I had a kind of performative relationship with my parents, where they congratulated me and seemed like they loved me more when I performed well. Right? I think it's a really common thing. I'm seeing it with my own toddler. It's really easy to clap for the good stuff and kind of be even keeled for the you didn't get the result. So I developed that with my parents, and so I just got on this treadmill of, okay, that's all I do. That's what I do. I have to perform better. I have to get better. And before long, I kind of forgot that was even why I was doing it in the first place. And now it's just like, I just do this. The golf is just who I am. So I can't let this go. If I let this go, then I'm letting myself go. So eventually I did do that. Not that I quit playing golf. I love golf more now than I did then, but that's because my reason for playing the game is so much healthier. It's not driven by performance to prove my worth to somebody, right? And I still have to catch myself, right? Because it's an old habit ingrained in me. But yeah, you're describing myself a lot. So I'm sure a lot of people experience that you talk to.
Yeah, that came to mind just because it's so common. And I love that you shared that, because your listeners will really be able to resonate with that. And it's amazing, how, and I can resonate with that too. I think in the first podcast, I can't remember if I shared, but I actually did walk away from the game. And it was because I took up the game quite late. My dad never put pressure on me to play. He he was a golf pro for 30 years, kind of like a teaching pro. I think when me and my sister cruised into this world, his plans to go play on tour kind of took a bit of a hit. But yeah, for me, it was like where I took it up late. I put so much pressure on myself because my dad was a pro, and I got so in my head that I could hardly swing it anymore. I was like a mini robot as I look back. And it's funny because my dad now says, if you'd had the mindset that you've got now with your ability to play, you would have been a bit of a force. And it's so funny now that I'm trafficking in the world of like the mental side of the game, because that was always my downside. But everybody can kind of relate with what we're sharing here, because, to let people know where this begins, it's actually like when we're like 1 or 2, right? That's why there's no shame, there's no guilt, there's no judgment for ourselves, or at least, that's what I try and overlay, is because, from 0 to like 1 or 2, we can do whatever we want, and we are loved unconditionally. Right? Now,
Hopefully.
hopefully, yeah, sadly not in some places, right? But what happens generally is that around that age, 1 or 2, we start to get language. And that's where parents start to think that we can understand them. So it's no judgment on parents either, right? But we think the parent thinks that the child now knows the difference between good or bad, and suddenly you could have done everything, that you wanted, and there's no stop, bad, don't do that. Suddenly you get that. And in that moment, as a little toddler, you suddenly learn that just being you isn't enough, that you've got to change who you are in order for the people that are basically keeping you safe. I've got to be how I think you want me to be to guarantee this unconditional love that I've got so far, this acceptance, this being wanted, this sense of belonging and safety. So that is the journey of suffering and how it begins. And that's why a lot of my work is in language, because it's code. And hopefully that helps people make a bit more sense of what I was saying earlier. So once we're on that track of trying, like you said, to get better, I was just trying to get better, to get better, to get better. What we are reinforcing is actually that we're not, right? We're enforcing the negative, because if we're trying to get away from something, we're reinforcing our view of ourselves, like I am inadequate, we could say. Does that make sense?
Mm, absolutely. That's really powerful. And now you were hitting at my own personal golf journey. Now you're hitting at my parental journey to be more unconditional, loving to my son. It's so difficult. Um, and I mean, it's impossible to do it perfectly, of course, right? But as adults, right, when we've been in this tangled web for, in my case, 34 years, and we maybe don't know any other way, how, I mean, that shows us how difficult, truly difficult it is to you can't just snap your fingers and suddenly you rewrite this 34 years of programming, or for some 60 years of programming, where, your parents, teachers, government or whatever, like we're told, you need to be different, you need to be different, you need to be different. So is the goal to, in some ways, just be yourself? Like, is that kind of an ultimate goal, right? Where I asked earlier, is enjoyment the ultimate goal? But, is, I don't know, we're getting, um, Eckhart Tolle a little bit, where it's maybe self-actualization is kind of our goal.
Yeah, wonderfully said. And I'd say so, right? Enjoyment is like a byproduct of discovering what we could say our authentic self, that which is beneath all of the conditioning, all of the programming that essentially is in language, right? These codes that run us unconsciously. So that's why there's so much grace, so much forgiveness, and we don't know what we don't know. If we knew different, we would do different, right? So that's a beautiful way of starting to reconcile our history, especially because so many people look back and they judge themselves for what they did wrong. So yeah, the process for me, if we truly want to be powerful in whatever we do, it is to get to that true self. And that's where the conversation can get for some a little bit woo woo. That's why I call it
Mm,
like, this deeper part of you, because language is so powerful. It could switch somebody off from even going there if it's not what they've learned or what they've known or they've been taught. Like, don't go looking at that, whatever, right? So yeah, the most powerful thing to see is that when you start to shine the spotlight of awareness on to this identity that we think we are, right? This voice in the head, and we look at the next layer of like our body, right? When we start to really unravel that, it's super cool, because you start to see all of the things that you've made up about yourself. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. The things that you've kind of tacked on, and the layers that you've added, and all of that. So, do you, when someone says something like "play like a kid" or something, right? You're being too controlling. Just go out there and play like a kid. Just free up. Is there issues with kind of trying to jump skip some steps and jump to the end result and okay, yeah, I'm just going to play like a kid. I haven't addressed any of these issues in myself. I still identify with the game, but I'm going to try today to, chill out, relax and just play like a kid. Can that cause problems or is that actually a helpful way to do
I wouldn't say it causes problems, it just doesn't work.
it?
And I'm really impressed by what works, right? Because it's kind of a bit like affirmations, a little bit, in that we're speaking something new into, what we're going to do or who we're going to be, but you haven't tidied up what's underneath that that's been there, as you said, for the 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years that says, no, you're not. Right. So you can get like a temporary result, but you're always going to default to that deeper programming. Right. So for me, the true transformation is in this dissolution of who you've been being. Right. And from there, the kid-like curiosity and playfulness and joy arises naturally. Right. So in the trying to be a kid and trying to be different, what we're saying still is there's something wrong with me. So we're reinforcing that there's something wrong. So it actually, not to say it makes it worse, but it's just not going to work long term. And I'm all about permanent transformation and not temporary like relief.
Mm. Yeah, that there's a I struggle also with, you know, the delineation or the balance between self-acceptance and change. And I don't like the way that I'm being. I don't like the way that I feel, so I want to change. But also there's nothing wrong with the way I feel. How can we deal with that? And I know uh, we might be a million miles away from golf at this point and that's okay, but I like how do you as a golfer, I don't like the way that I act on the golf course. I don't like how I feel in relation to golf, but also there's nothing wrong with me and there's nothing wrong with the feelings that I have. How can those two marry up?
Yeah. So what I'd say is that there's definitely nothing wrong with that person, right? We want to stay out of judgment, right? But there is a huge opportunity because whatever's coming up for that person, it is showing them where they're not free within themselves, right? So we want to first make space and accept that for right now, this is how I'm being, how I'm acting. It's okay, but with a commitment to go, okay, but why am I like that? What's really going on for me right now? One of my favorite questions for myself is, what would I have to believe to be true about myself right now in order to be reacting in the way that I am? Right. And by no means, I've been doing this work for like a decade. Um, and there's definitely times where I get triggered, and it's like, and then I go and do the work that I explain to everybody else. I've got an ego, or, we could call that an identity. Everybody's, got an ego or an identity, same. And it's just like sometimes that old programming can pop up and I'll forget something or something will be really confronting. And that's where, the rubber really hits the road. So first is accept there's nothing wrong. It's okay, but then with this level of commitment, okay, but what's really going on for me right now? And, a change is possible, not because there's something wrong, but as an evolutionary step for me to live a more powerful, meaningful, enjoyable life.
Yeah, I heard one time someone said, you know, the only way to change or it's really hard to change when you're acting from emotion and you're driven by ego or identity like you're saying and you're driven by judgment and I need to be different. It's really hard to change because you can't see clearly. You're not even seeing clearly what's going on. When you have acceptance, you're seeing yourself clearly, or you're kind of like wiping away all the added crap. You're sweeping off the dust so that you can actually see, okay, this is how I am, right? Acceptance, a definition I've heard is acceptance is seeing things how they are, not how you wish they were. So I'm looking at myself as I am, and now I can change. Like um, now I can mold myself differently. I have this power over myself to be able to uh, improve, uh, improve my relationship with golf, improve how I respond to pressure, or how if whether or not I encounter pressure in the first place. So, um, yeah, I heard that about kind of self acceptance, and that was helpful to me.
Yeah, as long as, we're not in acceptance, we're in suffering, because fundamentally the energy we're in is resistance, right? And the way it shows up, based on the mechanisms of the mind and how it traffics in time, is like we generally have resistance to our history. It shouldn't have been that way. That was wrong. In the present, we've got resistance, right? Right now, it should be different than it is. And in the future, it's like we're trying to avoid a bad future that hasn't happened yet, right? So there's kind of like resistance to all levels of time, right? So in order to really step into peace and this element of freedom and flow is to really start to see, where can I bring in acceptance in all those arenas, right? So in the present, right now, it is how it is. Can I accept that? Can I be okay with that? I'm not saying it's ideal. I'm not saying it's like optimal, but it is how it is, right? So if we can go, I can accept it is how it is. Now we've got a chance to shift gears into like, okay, so what do I want to do about that? Right. But the same, it's like with our history, if we're in resistance to our history, like that shouldn't have happened. I shouldn't have hit that shot on like the 13th hole, whatever. Okay, that's great, but it's not helping, right? Because what happened in that history has happened. It couldn't be any different because that's what happened, right? So if we can go, okay, I can accept that happened because it happened. It's like, well, how can I learn? How can I grow from that, right? And then the future is when we really get future doesn't exist. We're just scared of our own imagination. Then that allows us to kind of collapse time and come back into the present moment where we have the ability to impact the moment if we're present.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said, yeah, that was good. You said resistance is the alarm bell for awakening. You can choose to use this alarm as a tool for awakening into peace, freedom, and living a limitless life. So, what do you mean resistance is the alarm bell?
Yeah, it's I'm aware I swore a bit on your podcast last time and you bleeped me out. So I'm going to try not to do that today. And I'm practicing not swearing. I don't actually swear much in my day to day, by the way. It's only when I'm coaching or doing podcasts that it seems to move through me very passionately, right? So
Yeah.
yeah. So resistance is the alarm bell for awakening. What I mean by that is generally, wherever we feel resistance, like, I don't want this to be the way that it is, it shouldn't be that way. We are in resistance to reality as it is. Now, most people see that as a negative thing, right? But when you can shift perspective to see that resistance is showing you where you can't stay at peace or where you're not free, then actually any resistance that you experience is an opportunity into more peace and freedom, right? So it's actually the gift that is wrapped in many layers of sticky poop, right?
Mm.
I'm using poop where I normally would swear. You can use your own imagination, people's, right? But it is. So it's like, ugh, we don't want it. It's sticky. It's a horrible mess. But underneath it is like a gift if you can be willing to step into it, right? So for me, all resistance is the alarm bell for awakening. It's like wherever I feel triggered, ding, ding, wakey, wakey. Because generally, if I've got resistance, I've been subconscious, I've been not paying attention, I've been running on autopilot, right? Otherwise, I just observe the moment and I'm fully at peace with it. So yeah, it's a great tool for evolution and awakening if you're into that.
Yeah, I love the idea of okay, because I know I'm not perfect, I will encounter fear and pressure and the things that I'm trying to improve away from. I know I'm going to encounter those things. So when I encounter those, I'm not going to be swept up by them. It's not going to be stimulus then response. There will be the stimulus, and then I'll inject some conscious appraisal of the situation and then proceed how I want to proceed. And the only way I was able to do that is because I noticed the resistance in the first place. I think that's a really good framework. I think that's a really as woo woo and out there as all this can be. That's a really practical thing. Is the next time you go play, you just pay attention to all these things that you kind of don't like or that are uncomfortable or are the ways that golf, to use your word, is kind of is suffering, right? And golf can feel like suffering a lot of the time. But pay attention, notice those things, and then use them as a helpful trigger, not a hurtful trigger. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, I love that. I might even steal that, mate. It's helpful and not a hurtful trigger. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not you can use it as a helpful trigger.
Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna nick it, right?
Okay. That's fine. Do it. We're all trying to help each other out here. I love that.
Yeah, I'll quote you for sure. I love that though, and I love how you summarized it. Yeah, and as we kind of like shift into where I started with the work that I do is this dissolution process, right? We're we we're deleting these codes that cause the resistance. When you're starting to view that process that way, that's why it's so exciting when something triggers me, right? In the moment, I allow my humanity, and it's like, that's not ideal, that's not optimal. But if I'm feeling like I can't be with this moment, then that's something that I get to work on. And if I can dissolve that, let that go, surrender it, then what's really beautiful, I get more access to even greater peace, right? Even more power, more love, more freedom. So like life then becomes like this process of like polishing the gems that we are. I stole that from, I'm just stealing stuff all over the place. Nicked that off my mentor, Peter Crone.
That's beautiful. I like that.
Yeah, I can't claim credit, but yeah, it life takes on a totally new uh it just becomes this new experience, right? Otherwise, we become a victim to life. And, anyone that works with me, I explain you're either a victim or you're not. And there's no power in a victim stance, right? Because life is happening to you. So, yeah, that's why I love that shift in perspective.
Yeah. That's beautiful and powerful. Okay. So I wish we could go on forever, but we both have lives that we need to live that aren't in podcast land. So you mentioned your own kind of one-on-one work with clients and golfers. Do you have anywhere you would send a listener to, go check this out? I've just launched this or whatever, anything like that?
Yeah, the two places I generally focus on mainly is like my website, garywaters.co.uk, or Instagram, is where I share certain things, or like a space I like to hold myself accountable as well, like with working out or playing golf or just sharing insights that I've learned, a means of giving back. And, that handle there is I am Gary Waters. Gary Waters was gone. So if you Gary Waters
Mhm.
out there, please get in touch. I quite like that. That'd be way better. Um, but yeah, that
Yeah, because I am Gary Waters is ego and identity. We got to drop that.
exactly, which is quite funny. It's one of my buddies. He's got a similar handle, and we met because we're in a similar line of work. It's funny because it goes against kind of the work that we do, but in order oftentimes to really meet people where they're at, we've got to speak that kind of language. So yeah, it would-
Names are helpful.
it does. If I walk into a coffee shop and say, "Hey, I'm an infinite being of love, joy, peace, and freedom," they're gonna be like, "Okay, What do you want for coffee?
That doesn't fit on a coffee cup with my Sharpie.
No, but I'm so tempted to do it, mate. I might actually. I'll let you know how I get on. Yeah, probably
You
not.
should try that.
Okay, I'll let you know how it goes.
That's great. That's great. Okay, we got garywaters.co.uk and I am Gary Waters on Instagram. Awesome, Gary. This has of course been a pleasure. And if anyone wants, double the Gary, you can go to our previous episode. We recorded one back in September of 2024. So that one was equally awesome. And these might have been probably very similar, but we've both changed in the last 8 months or so, and I think bringing some new perspective to some of the same old topics is always good.
Yeah, for sure. And I love the way you shared that. Right, we've both evolved since then. We're this ever evolving perspective, and that first session was, we covered a lot of ground. That's what I'd say. And in this one, I may even have loved even more, mate. To acknowledge you, the questions that you ask. It just shows how much you know, and I feel really excited for anyone that is blessed to work with you. You're an incredible coach, incredible golfer. So yeah, just thank you for the work you do.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining another episode of the Mental Golf Show. If you like this episode, you will also definitely like my weekly golf newsletter, The Mental Regrip. You can check out the link to subscribe in the show notes. And be sure to check out the show notes for some awesome deals on some really great golf products. All right, everyone, get out there and play freely, and I will catch you guys next time.